Hello YouTubers, today I'm going to show you how to texture your drywall with your DAP joint compound. I prefer the purple container because the stuff is pink when it's wet and when it's dry it'll turn white. And it's just easier to use too. Don't get the red one, don't get the green or blue, get this one. You could get this at Home Depot for like $12 or your local hardware store. You can usually get this big bucket for pretty cheap. Now the particular texture I'm talking about here is this kind. This big texture on the wall. Not the tiny texture, but this big texture. Now most residential homes nowadays have this texture. It comes with this texture on the wall. So this is the particular one I'm talking about. The tiny texture, you could get a spray and you can spray it on your wall to make the tiny texture, but this is the big one I'm talking about, so don't get confused on that. So right here I just have a little piece of drywall. Right here there's a little cut. Just a piece of drywall I'm not going to fully do. Here's how it'll look, but I'll show you the step right here. So you're going to want to open the container joint compound up. And make sure it says Dry Dex Technology too, like right here. Yeah, this stuff is easier to use and it's not a pain in the butt to use. Yeah. So right here, I'm starting with the finger swipe. Just doing little finger swipes. Every once in a while, you want to fill a little spot up. It's going to be a big gloppy mess at first, but it is what it is. Once you sand it down, it's going to look really nice. See, like, don't put too much in one spot. Like, you want to fill it in little tiny areas like this, but you want to make sure it's a big glop like that. Don't make it too flat because then when you sand it down, it's not going to show up. Look at that. And this involves getting your hands dirty, as you can see. So make sure to wash your hands really good. Don't eat this stuff either. Don't try to attempt to eat it if you're that type of person that likes to challenge yourself to do silly stuff like that. I'm not telling, don't eat this stuff. I'm just telling you. This is just for home improvement use only. So see right here. I'll zoom in a little bit here. See these big glops? I'm not gonna fully do this piece of drywall because it's just gonna go in the trash anyways, so because it's no use besides for the video. Now keep in mind, you're doing this on a wall. This is just for demonstration only, so I've done this a couple times already on a ceiling and a wall that I had to cover up because there's mold and it had to get ripped out and everything, and it just stayed open for several months. So I ended up covering it and texturing the whole wall. See, like that. You may want to take your finger off kind of fast sometimes, like for the tiny textures like that. You don't want to leave too many empty spaces in the middle. Like, see, this is totally fine. If it's a big space, like all right here, let's say I put one here, and you just leave this empty. You don't want to leave this big space here because it won't look too nice. It will kind of look weird, and yeah. And this does require a lot of patience. So if you're not patient with this kind of stuff, I would not recommend doing it. But if you're patient, this requires patience, time and patience. So don't be rushing your project. If you're gonna decide to do this on a certain day, make sure it's a day where you're not doing anything, because this requires patience and you have to sand it down. And what I'm doing here is I'm shutting this. Now if you end up getting this big bucket of joint compound here, especially the purple container, the one with the purple label, if you're gonna keep this stuff for extra use in the future, I would recommend keeping it inside your hallway closet, or just put it in your house. Don't leave it in your garage. Don't leave it in a space where it's too hot, because this stuff will dry up. Now I keep this stuff in my room, so that way when we need it, it's still good. Because this is a pretty great deal getting this stuff for a great price at your local hardware store for a big bucket of this stuff. And make sure when you're done with your project, make sure you get a hammer and hit it with your hand like that, all on the edges, to make sure that this is sealed. Because if you don't seal it, it's going to dry. And you're not going to be pretty happy about that. So I'm just telling you, keep this out of reach from children. You don't want your children eating this stuff. So if you're gonna put it in your house, I would recommend putting it in your house, but keep it away from your children, pets, other people around, because they don't want them to eat this stuff. This stuff isn't edible or anything like that. So keep it away from them. Now, I'll be back with you to sand this down to show you the final results. So I'll let this stuff dry for a few hours, and then I'll be back with you. Okay, YouTubers, so this is all dry now. So now I'm ready to sand it down using my 3M sander. And yes, this has been used previously, but it'll still work because this is reusable sandpaper that you put on this 3M sander. You can get this at your local hardware store for pretty cheap. So this is how you sand it down. See how it's almost starting to look like the texture, but you still gotta go pretty deep. And this will be a lot of dust. But since this is in my workshop, it's fine, so. If you have dog food or water out in the open, or even you might want to scoot your furniture if you have sensitive furniture from your work area. Scoot away from your work area, because this has a lot of dust, as you can see. So it almost looks like that texture. There you go, YouTubers. This is your fine texture. You do it from this to this. So there you go, YouTubers. That's how you make the big texture on your wall without special tools. All you need is your hand, some joint compound with the purple label. That's this Dry Dex technology. And your 3M sander that you can purchase at your local hardware store or Home Depot for pretty cheap. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. And subscribe to me.